Hey, Lindsay. Oh, I can't. Oh, I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
How about now?
Now I can. Sorry,
Right.
I'm late.
Oh, you're totally fine. You're wonderful. So we're just adding on more layers of the neons, the purples now over what we did before. So yeah, feel free if you want to come on video, you can turn your video on. If you don't want to, if you're painting alongside, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing yesterday today, so I'm a little bit behind, but I'll paint along.
Oh, you're totally fine. I can't wait.
All right.
Okay, so as we're doing this, I'm just going to keep talking because I am recording this for you guys as well.
All right.
Okay, so as we're doing this, we're going to continue to layer in the neon over that Rodmel salt wash that we had yesterday on here. And the more that you really work this paint, because these neons are so translucent, you can see where that turquoise underneath is going to come through as well. So again, back, forth, circular motions, all of that is really going to help to increase the texture and increase that smoothness of your blend. What do you think of the colors, Deb?
I like them. I like how you're putting them together.
Cool.
I have a much smaller piece and not as much detail, so I'm gonna try to, we'll get there.
No, it's okay. And I picked a larger piece because I wanted you to see how far this paint really can stretch too.
Right. I love how it's capturing all the colors in all the details of the piece. Pretty cool.
Good, I'm glad. Everywhere where that shadowing was also from yesterday, I want to highlight that with this purple. That way you can really see that blend in here. And I will say too, if you ever get to where you're feeling like you're getting a specific shape and you don't want that shape, add some wax and it will allow you to blend that paint back out as well. And I know painting with wax is a very different way of painting, but I find that it gives you that blended finish and the texture that I love so much really well. Hi, Ms. Rhonda. How are you? So we're adding on more of the hot damn violet and layers of the wax together. that's going to help us increase that shadowing and texture as well. But when you paint with paint and wax, your blending is really smooth. So you can do this on its own like this in layers, or you can blend the paint into the wax like we did yesterday with that highlight green. I'm going to see if I can take this one. Let's pin that because I want you to see that detail. Even more so. I'm going to put you back up here as we start working on the second drawer as well. So this is just the hot damn violet. So where I've had more purple down here on the bottom, now I'm going to really make sure I don't lose all of this green, because the purple is going to start to kind of fade and just become an accent color as we reach the top. So again, that's just hot damn violet and really thinking of where I want these areas to be to highlight. So I've got a lot of like really cool texture here in the grooves from how it dried with that gray underneath. And I just kind of think of where I want that color pattern to be with this. And these translucent neons are like absolutely perfect for this. When I do this with regular paint that doesn't have that translucency, I do water it down a little bit as well. Or I add a little bit more wax to it, so it's got that translucent additive. This is just the wax I'm going to add on next. And I like that because it really helps give it glide as we're painting too. And I love these like bleed stains that come from this. And if you kind of take some of that purple out of there, and you can keep that purple edging. And I don't have more purple on my brush. I'm just letting what I have come off the brush to blend this out. If I push hard, it's going to pick paint up. If I keep it soft, it's going to allow all the darker edges of this to stay. But I want to start, you know, letting this purple fade a little bit in here, so we start getting more of this green coming through here too. And then the purple, like I said, is going to become accents in and around all of this texture. And the piece will have more green on top and more purple on the bottom. And don't feel like you're overworking your paint, because you're really not. It's going to allow you to have this really, really smooth finish to it. And then I'm going to take that soft sanding block, if you guys have to. Not on me. That's it. And I'm gonna really lightly, like we did yesterday, buff it to pick some of that purple up and allow that green to kind of shine through again. But I want this dust and that crumble to stay there from the wax. You can see how it will deepen up some of those edges too. So I just pat that back in so we don't lose that. By doing this, you're lifting just barely that top surface of purple off to allow that green underneath to come through, and then you have that cool contrast. So really, really lightly. And don't dust this off, don't wipe that off. We're gonna want to use that purple on here for other parts. So allow that to collect. And it's all like falling into these grooves in here too. Just leave that in there. And I would just lightly go in with a clear wax and just tamp that in there so it stays. And then it becomes that that texture inside of the grooves of this piece. Anywhere that you have that kind of line work in your piece, same thing. I love this so much. This is going to be so pretty. I can't wait to see everybody's pieces. Okay, dog. I've got a yappy little guy. So with the purple, let's finish the right side of this drawer. Again, I like how we're losing some of the purple too and allowing the green. So this is a little heavier here. I think I'm going to go even less. So you can kind of see that purple walking across. This is lighter in here, so I can tell I miss waxing that. But wax this as you go, because you're going to add more wax layers on top of this. So just make sure that everything is getting sealed in. So then as this dries and we go to the next color and the next layer, you don't lose what you've already put down. We'll continue to keep that. do want to add a little more purple actually right here in the bottom drawer, just here on the corner. Just looking at the movement. So maybe right here. How about in here? All right, just over here and there. I don't want to do too much, but because I laid that wax down, it's going to be a really pretty sheer purple in here, which I like. And it's going to be on the surface versus underneath. Like, so that's the other part of when you are painting in layers with wax. If you lay the wax down first and put this on top, you're going to very noticeably see the difference of it laying on the surface of the piece versus underneath it, blending into that green. So it depends. Like I would say do a variety of both. Don't just do it one way. Definitely mix it up. And then where we added that texture in with the green, when we first put it down, you're able to really see that, that texture come through in this highlight in here now. You can see that with the purple over this. Trying to see those crosses in there of the green paint. I'm just trying to hold you for a minute. This is just wax. And really see that pop. See all that texture in there. And again, it's multiple textures because of how we laid down those initial colors too. And this purple is not just one shade of purple, with how it's being worked more in certain areas and then how the wax is laying in other areas too. So in some spots you'll get a heavier, you know, pigmented area, where in other spots it's going to be very thin and sheer and just a little highlight color. Hopefully you can see that okay on there. And I barely, this is, I didn't fill this. You guys have 6 ounces like I do. I'm not even using this. Your guys are going to have plenty of paint left over. Let's do here. To do this too. This is just a dusting over here. This had less purple, so I'm going to add just a touch more here, and then it's really going to be in the shadowings up into these drawers and then into there even less. So on this side, you need to drop this purple onto the side framing and then onto this leg. Let's see if I can move you here. So you can kind of watch this leg kind of happen. And I'm going to do a little bit. So that one's got quite a bit of purple up top. but where this is gonna lay over this rod mel from Annie from the salt wash. And allow it to have multiple textures in it too. And you can have some areas of more purple of the violet and some areas that have less. So like in here, it's brighter. And then you've got these deeper tones and then more green versus less green, but really just, it doesn't have to completely counterbalance the other side. It's just all telling a story together. And just really work it so it blends in really smooth. And I'm just rubbing some of that back so I can keep some of those green spots a little bit more green. But really just mixing it up. It doesn't have to be the same all the way down. It's better if it's not. I'm moving you guys around a lot. I just want you to see all that detail. Don't forget the backs and the insides. So you get a lot of different. So it's like there's the woods coming through, the depths of the grays coming through where the green is. You've got like 3 different shades of purple in here now because of the broad mel, the salt wash, and then the neon. So tons of different textures and layers about it. And you just wax this so it seals all that in. So when we go to the next layer, we don't disrupt those colors. Even when I'm doing like just my clear wax, I'm not going just in one smooth direction. I'm adding multiple directions even within that part. So that as it dries, you have more than one brush stroke built into even that sealing layer. Back over here so we can work this top drawer. So in here now, as we're doing this, I don't want to lose the green. I want to make sure the green is really highlighted in here. So I'm going to start with where the salt wash is. And down here in this groove, underneath this wood overlay. Really try to. This, so I can start adding in that shadowing. And then when you're doing it, make sure you're feathering this out into this direction so you don't have any hard lines. But this shouldn't be the exact same everywhere either. Allow that to have its own movement and depth, where more green shows in some areas, more purple in others, but let that build out. We're going to do that too with those different circular motions, and I do a lot of these X's in here, especially on those edges when I want to feather that out, really work that in like a circular motion. And then again, you can still see those pops of green in there. And I'm working like off the edge of this jar. Like I'm just really not using a ton of paint at one time. Anywhere where maybe I want a little bit brighter of that purple, I'm adding a little bit more. So I'm going to use this same sanding block and just use a different corner now, just to kind of scratch the surface on some of that. And maybe where I want to just pop a little bit more of that green out. I can pick some of that purple up so I don't lose that depth. And really smooth out those feathered marks in the paint too. Let me add some wax to this. Like that. And I'm going to add just touches of purple in here, but not much because I really want this green to pop. And then later on, as we're sanding more, we'll go over this green area with some of this purple that's left on the sandpaper. We'll put some of that into the wax later too, just to kind of finish out that color story. So really, really, really lightly this time. Just a little bit in here, just like a dusting. So you can just get a little bit of a purple glow in here. And over that hardware, just a tiny little bit. I really don't want to lose the green in those areas. So just a little touch. And if you've got any kind of grooving or edging when you do this and you allow it to just catch those edges, it really makes that depth of the color inside pop, which is all I'm doing here. And then I'm going to just rub it off of that green. Okay. And then the same thing on this side. I'll do over here that same thing. Kind of dust those edges with just a little bit of that purple. And where on this side, I kind of did, this edging over here, I'm kind of working the corners so they're not completely symmetrical. You get touch the left side of this hardware versus that, or sorry, the right side of this hardware versus the left on the other side. As well. Okay, let me wax these new areas. And I wax the hardware too because I don't want that paint to come off. And then when I'm done with this whole piece, this is where it kind of depends on you and how you want to do this. I let my pieces cure for 30 days. What I do is I allow 7 days of this wax to cure, and then I use a harder paste wax over the whole piece very lightly to seal all of this in. And that paste wax takes 21 to 30 days to cure. So over the course of a month, I've got all of my sealants on, but this will never be able to come off with that paste wax on top of it. The paste wax is clear, or you can even use a clear bry wax, but it allows this to seal in. So your clients don't have to re-wax this and rebuff this over time. It completely seals and hardens in the piece, which is what I love. But it's personal preference. If you don't want to go that and you want to just be able to sell it, I'd say give it at least a week for the wax to completely harden, especially because we do put multiple layers of wax on this. You want to give it that chance to, and then buff it in a week's time, and you'll really get that beautiful sheen that we all love with wax out of it. Okay. I'm just looking at it from a distance. I love it though. Okay, so let's start working on the top drawer as well. So up here, we're going to highlight with this, but I also want to use that rod mill to add some more shadowing in here, which is the deeper purple that I sent to you guys, the little Annie Sloan jar. So I've got some in my jar here, and I'm going to use a really small brush, which I did not grab. Hang on. Okay. It's just another one of the smaller paint pixies. This is the number 4. Yesterday I used the number 6, but I really like this, getting into these kind of tighter crevices in here with that detail, and then up in here with some of that shadowing. So I want to lay some of this down first, and then we're going to use the violet, the hot damn violet, mixed into some wax to blend the two together. So just a little bit, and we're going to stipple this into here. Again, I don't want to completely cover up that green, but I want to add some more contrast into here. And it's not the same for each and every one of them. just a tiny bit. And think of like where you want that to kind of come from. Okay, so there's that, and then let me, while I have it out, kind of go into some of this as well, where I want some shadowing inside this piece. And again, if you don't have carvings on your piece, you can do this even with different areas in the corners of your drawers where you want to add some of that shadowing in it with this rod mill. I'm just rubbing some of that off to get that wood out. You can see up here in these darker corners even, where the cracks, you can't really see it like that. And up here in these grooves, you can see where the gray and the green have met with the wood, and it's giving you all of that like aged look inside of those corners. In here. In here. So we're just adding in some shadowing and some depth in here. Again, it's not all the same. I don't want it to look symmetrical inside of here. I want it to look just balanced and natural, as if like time really did age it in those ways, in those areas. And again, I have the salt wash in here with the rod mill, so that's all going to get highlighted with the violet too. I'm really just working the paint right off this brush onto this. I'm not adding a lot of this paint. And hopefully by the end of this, this will teach you another way of painting, not just with texture, but how to really get the most out of the volume of your paint by painting in sheerer layers and really working your paint this way. That would definitely be my goal. I feel like so many times people buy massive quarts of paint for projects, and where it makes sense, you know, on really large pieces, on pieces like this, you're gonna have quite a bit of extra paint still. Even yesterday with the green that we had, I still have quite a bit of this left. Oops. Quite a bit of that left. I didn't use all of the green. And the green wax that we made, because we used that too. I still have half a jar of that green wax. So you should have plenty of paint to easily paint a piece this size with everything that I sent to you. Again, just think of painting in this sheerer way to really achieve this look, because it really is all about layers and textures in what we're doing. Just want some of that wood to show on the edging. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with Hot Damn Violet and start highlighting these areas and get that contrast in there too. So that's really a statement piece on this specific piece here. And I want to have some depth in there. I don't want it to just be the violet. Again, just I'm rubbing off that excess. It's just a little bit on the end of that brush, not a full dip. And I'm not completely covering up all that rod mel that we just put down either, because I want that contrast. Into it, so it's not just one color and it's not just this highlight everywhere either. I really try to work the edges too, so that purple catches the edge of like this drawer or the lip of the top, the edge in here and this purple piece, and then you can rub some of that back out to bring that green back forward also, which we will be able to use some of that green wax as well and layer in some as a highlight. Okay, well, that's so pretty. I'm rubbing some of that violet off and some of that green back. I want a little bit of that wood to come in here. Again, I don't want to completely lose the green, so this is just wood. I'm just showing some of the wood in here. I'm taking some of the purple off the surface so that green comes through with some of that wood, that brighter green. Will come in there too. Wood in there. And scratch some of that back. If it looks too solid, like I feel like that looks too solid, then I think that's exactly when you need to kind of break that up. So it shows the layers of it all. Okay, add some wax into here. You can kind of see this a bit more. So pretty. Again, this piece has a lot of different angles inside of here, so I'm just making sure I'm getting all of those angles with the wax too. Let's add the violet onto this section here. Again, I don't want it to be exactly the same as this one. So where this one was more violet in this end, maybe I take it here on this corner instead. A little bit more. So same thing, I just want to, anywhere that it feels too solid of a color, I'm just going to remove some of that and let some of that green and that salt wash float through. Okay, so I think if you look at the full screen, like I feel like the front is really close. I think this is needing a little bit more purple into here, but I want to do purple wax. So I'm gonna take, because I don't want it to be too thick. So I've just got some hot damn violet in my bowl, maybe like a silver dollar, a little bit less, and I'm gonna just grab some more clear wax, just like we did yesterday. Mixing the wax into paint. So it's thick. Right? But when you paint it, it's very sheer. So it's not a lot of color that's going to come off on this. Just I'm wiping off excess paint. This was my purple paintbrush too. But I want to kind of drag some of this purple wax into this area without it being solid. And again, this is purple wax over where we already did the clear wax. So you're going to get another texture and layer, and this is another layer on top of what we already put down. So let me do some in here too. And just little bits of it. Not a ton. I don't want to lose the green, but I want to add another texture and another layer, so another shadow almost into this. So in here, let me add some down in here. And you can see I'm using multiple different directions. I'm not just using one, and I'm not over blending this in because I want that sheer bit to be in there. So same thing in here. We'll add just a sheerness of this into there. Just so it's like, oh, there is just a little like kiss of purple on there. Not a whole lot, but you can just barely see it. Just a little bit. On the hardware too. So I feel like that kind of made the areas that felt really solid green, not quite so solid, but I didn't lose any of that in there either. Where I can still see all that green coming through. Up here, maybe just a touch. But yeah, like I love the way the front has come out. I think it's just gorgeous. So the other thing we can do is with some of that green wax that we have from yesterday. Let me grab my brush, which I didn't do this because I finished after. I just cling wrap my brushes. A lot of people do this. I will do this with my projects until I'm completely done with them. So I don't have to keep washing brushes. And that's just kind of a waste of paint, taking it off of the brush and then putting it back on. So with this, we're going to do a very similar thing of what we just did with the purple, but now I want to use some of this green to highlight even in some of these solid purple areas. So we get that contrast again. So same thing, this is going to leave a very sheer green over this, but give it just a little highlight. So that purple doesn't feel so solid of a purple where we did the salt wash. And any of the edges of it are going to pick up this green. You could even do this with like a gold, like golden ticket. You could do this with even another color. And if you wanted to bring another color into this, you could just kind of hit the edges of this. So it has that little bit of highlight on it as well. And just a tiny bit. I mean, just let it hit like the peaks of the salt wash, not a lot, but then it breaks it up from feeling like it's such a solid purple area right there. And same thing in here. I'm just gonna drag it across in here. And it's not straight. I don't want it to be straight. The edges in here where I touched it with purple, even with the green. Definitely down these sides to add some of that texture to this purple so it doesn't feel, again, so solid, which it does, and that's okay. But I like to just kind of break some of that up a little bit. So over here, where it's really solid in purple, I'm just going to give this like a really, and you could do this with, I guess, dry brushing too, but I like the wax because it's very sheer and it's easy to work with this way. But I'm just gonna hit parts of this so it goes into those crevices, giving the salt wash the groove and that depth that it's really known for. Again, this to me is the fun part when you get to go through and just start touching all of the details. With it. It's going to depend on like where your salt wash is at. Obviously, you don't all have them in the same spots, but definitely go through and give it that depth. You can even just hit up some of the edges of it too. On the leg, on this lower section, anywhere that you laid salt wash, just kind of really softly go over it. So the little peaks of it have that highlight. If there's anywhere that is too purple for you that you want to bring green back, you can go over those sections with this green wax also, because it'll be very sheer. As well. But what I love about this too is we're using four colors, I guess, because of the gray, but three main colors with the green and the purples to create so many different layers and textures with it, using the same things kind of on top of each other. Where it's fun to paint with, 12 colors on a piece. If you only have a few, you can do a lot with a few of them in different ways. Creating depth and highlights and contrast to them as well. You don't have to have every single color to be able to do that. And of course, you can always mix colors with mixology as well. Okay, so I'm loving all of this. What I'm just doing is on this edging, is I'm just going back and forth. It's not flat on here. I'm just using the side of the brush for whatever wax is back or left, just to catch the edges of this, right? And any peaks, and then you can rub some of that back off, bring the purple back, rub some of the green in. You can see all of the depth that we've been able to create. The wood that was able to show through into it. Down in here, just rubbing over where that salt wash is at, so it catches any of the raised parts. The legs. That's just so pretty, and all of this texture in here. Okay, so I am going to change this phone to a higher spot so I can get the top going with you. Reach for us. Let me move this detail phone. Okay, I just want to make sure you can see. So in here, we've got our shadow that we laid yesterday with the green. We've got that detail up here on this little backsplash as well. So we're going to do the same kind of layering. We'll start with the purple, so we can layer some of this in. And we'll add neon and we'll wax. So same kind of thing, just like we did on that top drawer. Like where do I want a little bit more shadowing or a little bit more depth on the top of this piece. Okay, so now I want something here. It doesn't have to be everywhere, but this is just where I want a different shade of the violet to lie, and where maybe I want some of this Rodinal purple to stay as well. I always recommend hitting those edges. It just gives it such a good contrast. And this is just paint. This doesn't have wax in it. This is just the regular rod mill. And I'm just working off of a tiny little bit. Again, I'm not going for hard lines, but I'm going for like where that shadowing is going to be. And just like we did on the front in here, I want to keep green in here and really showcase that purple around this circle. So then on the top, I really like the green on the top. I just want to touch it with a little bit of purple, but I want that green top to make a statement too. And I really, just like we did the movement on the front, like to think of like opposite corners. So if I go heavier here, I'm going to go lighter back there and heavier back there, so there's a balance. And this has like little dots of like where the paint has fallen off onto this. I'm not blowing that off. I'm okay if that lives in the wax and creates some depth in the wax as we get to that too. I like the way that looks. But if it bugs you, you can blow it off. Anywhere that is raised in the green from the layers of green and gray, I'm just lightly dusting this over. So like in here where there's, I can feel texture that we were able to create. I'm just dusting this over to see if it will catch any of those edges, much like we did with the salt wash with the green highlight. Can I pick up any edges in here? There we go. Of some of this purple over where we made texture. So all the little bumps in the paint are now little peaks of the paint. So if we're really soft, and again, we're not bending the brush, we're not laying a bunch of paint down, but if I'm able to just do a dusting over this, it will catch any of the raised surfaces in the paint. So let's grab purple. And I'm going to do the hot damp violet first, and then we'll add some of the purple wax afterwards, just like we did to the front. So in here, I know I don't want to cover up this circle completely in that green. I want to highlight with this purple around it. And if you have detail like this, you can always switch to a smaller brush. I'm fine with this, but if it feels clunky to you or you're nervous about putting too much product down, like just switch to a smaller brush. It's totally fine. Again, I'm just feathering this out. I'm going to just hit the edges of that in the purple, and then I want to rub some of that off to see if I can get some of that wood back too. Like that. And if I can't, then I'll just use that little sanding block for it too. So where we laid that rod on, I just want to highlight that with this brighter purple to add another depth. And then I am going to go over that and sand it back a little too. I'm on the uneven surface. Little guy is moving on me. Again, so now where we created those shadows from the gray underneath is where I'm going to lay some of this purple violet down. Because this is translucent, it works really well with this. Again, if not, add your regular paint to the wax, or you can just use the purple wax also. But these being on that translucent side, it's not going to put a huge color, payoff down. So you're able to really work it into those areas, so it doesn't feel like one big heavy solid purple piece of paint, sitting on it. There. Sorry. This is where we added the rod mill. And I like the brightness of this violet. If it's too much, I guess you could reverse it and do rod mill over this, but I think it will probably cover this up too much. I love the neons. I love the formula, especially of the neons. And you're just really working to blend this out so you don't have any solid areas like this. Just blend that out. Allowing it to still show through, but there's no hard edges. You're able to almost scratch through to the green underneath it and allow that to come through as well. And I'm not going to do every single spot that we shadowed, but I do want to just make sure that this follows through and if the blending on top makes sense. Here, move over. Okay, so over here, this is where we kind of had the deeper shadowing on this part of the piece. We added some with the rod mill here, and then I'm going to do a little bit on the front. So this in here has shadowing, not a ton, but just a little bit. And if it doesn't have the shadowing, you're going to get like that brighter of the purple, which is so pretty. Again, it's just more contrast that you're adding to the piece to make it more interesting. And I'm using the side of the brush. That's how I kind of destroy them. But I think they just get better the more spazzed out the bristles look too. And it's not that I'm pushing hard, I'm just using different directions of the brush to kind of blend some of this out too, especially on the edging. So in here, we've got some more of that shadow. So I'm going to go some of it and then just below it also. And I'm hitting the edge of this with this purple too. Way too much paint. I'm just hitting the edges of this piece. We have that little purple highlight in here. And then we can take some of it back to the wood. Some of this rod mill still shows with the violet over it. It's not completely covered. Here we'll cover some of this, but not all of this. So maybe more in the corner. I don't want to cover all of that because it gives it just a different depth and color. Okay. Let's do some clear wax on this now on the top. Put some on my hand because I mixed mine into the purple already. So this is just clear wax. Just really work this in. It's going to also smooth out any like hard edges you might have had from the paint. So really work your wax. So after this, we'll do a little bit of that green paint or the green wax for some highlight. And then I want to go in on the front and down and add some black wax also to add a little bit more of an aged and shadowy look. And I love black wax. You don't have to use the black wax on your piece. This is just kind of one more element that I'm going to do to it, just for mine. But you do what is comfortable to you. I just want to show you another option. Okay. So I'm digging that and how it looks. Come back a little bit so you can see too. It's so pretty. I love all the purple detail. So let me see how we are on time. Okay, so we've got an hour and a half. Let me do one of the sides so you can see a side get done, and then I'll do the black wax also. In fact, let me do, sorry, I didn't do the screen highlight on here, and I want to bring it closer again. And I don't need a ton of it, but I do want to just on some of these edges where it's very purple, just go over it with some of this green wax that we made. And just to give it some of that depth into this area. So it doesn't look quite so solid of a purple. Almost dry brushing, but because you have that wax, it's easy to blend it back in if you feel like you got it in the wrong spot or it's more than what you wanted. But it's going to help take some of these purple sections that are really solid and just break up them a little bit. So I'm not going to do all of it, like that's a brighter spot. This has both. This can use just a touch of it. Similar to dry brushing, like I said, but we're doing it with the wax. It just gives it a little bit more of a depth and it drops that highlight on there, which is really what is going to help make, you know, that contrast in your pieces happen. It's almost shipwrecked looking. It's really cool. This contrast. Okay, so let's do a side. Let me turn this guy around. I did already put the neons on the frame of this side. Sure, I want to put this on time. So this side has just the neons done. On these bars, but that's all that has been done to this. Okay. So we've got to do just like we did on the top, figure out where we want those depths and shadows to be, and then we'll do highlight green on these as well. So we'll start with the Rodmel. Just looking at where I want the movement to be. Coming off of here, so if we add something here. definitely love when that age comes from the bottoms on the sides. It's typically like where our pieces are always like feathered off with veneer anyway, chipped off. I want to add depth into that spot. It looks like we've got like shadowing kind of in here, down in here, which I like. So I'm gonna just kind of enhance some of that. Where some areas are going to be more, some are going to be less. Again, as we're putting that violet over this, it's going to give you multiple layers and multiple depths of contrast. Look at this. Well. So it's kind of walking through here in the middle, this darker contrast and this new shadow. And you can see like I'm picking up all the texture of the paint here too. Like when I rub this, I'm not adding paint onto it. I'm just using what's there to touch the texture of the paint that we created. And then same like the front, the darker will come up and rise. So this will be more green with touches of the purple up top of the violet. But I do like those kind of broken corners. More shadowing. Okay, let's get some violet on, and you can definitely see where there's a lot more violet on here too on this side, which I did on purpose because I wanted to show you how you can remove some of it if you wanted to. And then also, so like we want it to be a little bit more sheer where some of this has quite a bit of it. You can remove some just with water if you want to. If you feel like it's too much, it's easy to take it back. So I've got that green right back in there. Just how I actually want it, like in here again. This is a lot. This was intentional so I could show you how to fix it if you feel like you put too much on. Just really lightly, you can wipe that back. You can do it in the moment, or if you go back and you're like, oh my gosh, it dried, I don't like it. You haven't waxed it in yet. And even if you have, you can take that soft sanding block and wipe some of it back too. But this way I've got more of that green contrast in here, which is what I want. Okay, that looks better. And then I didn't put the violet down here yet. So let me do the violet in here and then we'll finish this little leg too. So he's got that same contrast as the front. So again, just a little bit of paint and I'm working from the bottom up and I'm just letting it kind of kiss the peaks of that salt wash. And I just, like I said before yesterday, I really slap this in there. It will allow that to blend for you. This is just the tips of the bristles, working over that salt wash to really blend it for us. And then the same thing on this inside one, which I will move around to do in a second. So wherever we have this, you know, that's where I want to kind of tell that purple story. And then by putting this over that rod mill, it's going to feather off these area or these edges as well. not just because it's translucent, but because we're layering that other color over it. So anywhere like that felt like it kind of had a hard edge, you know, where you have a very hard edge, this is going to add that layer over it that's going to soften those edges. And then when you blend this out and feather off even that violet, it's going to furthermore soften your edges and give you that shadow. And then Deb, Rhonda, I know you guys are on. If you guys have any questions while I'm doing this, please let me know. Just feel free to unmute and ask. So in here, you can see all the texture of the paint too that we created. All of that is getting hit with this in here. So it's creating even more depth and shadowing like in there with this piece. And that's where all those beginning layers are really crucial on how you apply them and put them on in multiple different directions. You can see the different directions in here of how I laid that paint. That's what's going to help this really hit all those peaks and valleys of the tops of those bumps. This is some of the purple wax. I just want this to be a little sheerer in here. I love that swoosh in here. This is happening because of how we laid the gray and the green first on those base layers. So this is giving that a kind of cool texture into it as well. Just grab some clear wax, start waxing this. How this looks. It's just clear wax. I'm just sealing this layer in. Again, we're going to go over this with the green wax so we can highlight all of this edging, just like we did on the front. I'm going to add a little purple in there. Again, I'm not completely covering up that rod now. I'm just adding a sheer layer to it to give it different depths. And then just like we did on the front, on those areas that had the green and we just wanted to add a sheerness of the purple, I'm going to do the same thing with some of the purple wax in these green areas just to get some of it into there. Let me add the violet here. So let me finish clear waxing this section and then we'll drop that purple wax onto it and then we'll highlight with green. So some of these areas I could see where I stippled that just didn't blend in as much, and sometimes you don't notice that till you wax. This wax will blend those out for you too. But it will also pick up your paint, so just don't push hard, but work it. If that makes sense. But this really does help smooth out lines that you might not love in adding this wax in between every layer. That's the funniest noise happening right now. Okay, so all of that's on there. Now I want to add some of the purple wax, not a ton, but just little bits of it into here. And you can see how it just casted that really soft shadow of purple, but it didn't take away from the green. Barely touching this, just really letting it just softly drag on its own. But again, there's no hard lines. It does it for you. Okay, let me add this to the inside of this leg. Don't forget that. And then we can highlight with our green wax. So just like we did on the front, everywhere that we've got those peaks or anywhere on this that we now want to add that pop of highlight, we can do that. So putting someone here, again, I'm going to just barely brush over this and see where it catches. Like right in there. On these bumps. Even on edges. You can smooth out anything that feels hard lines to you. It's giving that contrast onto it. Just lightly hitting those edges and not everywhere, you know, just kind of sporadic too. I'm looking at the front here, like where I touched it on the front that's rolled over to make sure I'm allowing that to wrap on the piece and tell that same story. And then on here, I don't want a ton of highlights down here, maybe just a little bit on those edgings. And just softly on the edge of some of this. Or if I can get it to pick up on any of these bumps that I know are here. Even over a shadow, you can do a section of it, like right in here with this highlight. I wouldn't do the whole thing, but if you just did part of this, you're gonna have a different contrast of that shadow happen too. Right, and then you can have that highlight in there. Same thing next to these purple ones. Just drag some of that in there so it's not so solid, but you've got more depth to it. I'm really not adding a bunch more onto my brush. I'm just kind of lightly using what's left over on here to do this part. Okay, that side looks done to me. Cool. Okay, so let's leave that and kind of let it set up a little bit. I am going to spin this around again. And we get some of my black wax. Let's see if I can shrink you back down. Okay, I don't love you on this. Yeah. Gives you a little bit more. There you go. Okay, so I've got black wax. Again, this is just DIYs, or you can use dark wax too. Let me grab another wax brush. It really doesn't matter like what size wax brush you use. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. Some have a longer handle on them. Some are just, you know, a little bit more dense to them. It's whatever you're comfortable with. This is a Bell brush from Dixie Belle that I really love using these for kind of this detail wax. It's got a little bit more of a tapered edge to it, and it's more kind of thicker and oval. But when I'm going in on kind of some like tighter grooves, I really like that. Or again, these smaller pixie brushes are awesome. I don't think chip brushes work as well. They're just kind of too spanned out. It's a really old Annie Sloan brush I have, but this one's really good too. It's whatever you want, whatever works for you. So I'm going to go through and try to get this black wax done. We've got about another maybe 45 minutes to an hour together. So if I can get the black wax done and finish this other side, I will. If not, I'll finish the side afterwards. I want you to be able to see this detail first. Okay. So I like to do my darker waxes after I clear wax, after I paint waxed. That's just me. I feel like it glides on a little bit more. There's definitely more, I don't know, I guess room for error if something goes on and you don't love it, because it's being applied on top of the other wax already. There's a little bit more glide to it, I would say. Okay, so this is just a Bell brush. This is just black wax. If you've not used black wax, it's just like how we've been painting. It's a sheer wax, but it's going to give a lot of shadowing. So I would use that. You can have a towel with you. The rag that I sent you guys, however, as well, to go through and do kind of this contrast. If you feel like you have too much, put it on here. If you feel like you put too much on, use your towel and you can wipe away. You can use cheesecloth to wipe away too. It's kind of whatever you want. But I want to definitely shadow in here to give even more depth to this. Specifically, okay, see if that'll help it from rocking. And it's up to you, like start with a thin layer, add more if that's what you want to it. You do not have to do this part on your piece. I just want to show you kind of another element that you can do to your piece if you want to. So I'm wiping off my excess. And whatever's on the edges here, I'm just feathering out. That's too. So this is going to allow this center to be highlighted, and then this edges are amongst the purple also going to have kind of a richer tone to them, really making this a focal point for a highlight. So when I do this, I kind of do an X down, and then I'm going to round where the X meets and just really lightly feathering it. And for this piece, because I have all this line work, I'm kind of following that line work to give it some shadowing. But nothing's going to be a hard line. I don't have a lot of wax on here. And even the sections of this brush that really don't have much wax is kind of my blending side as well. Where the other areas are depositing color, that side is kind of brushing it away. I'm just giving some of the textures again that we made some depth to them by doing this. Go groove of the piece. I have not highlighted in here intentionally because I knew that I wanted to make this feel deeper with the darker wax. So you can really see like all this shadowing in here now. This looks like a really beautiful highlight. This is highlighted. You know, those key points for sure are. Where down here, it doesn't have any of that wax. You can really see that comparison in the two too, where the shadowing up here and this just looks very flat. So that's why I like adding this. Again, it just adds the opposite contrast of the depth to this. I'll give it some too to kind of warm some of it up. And the edge of this on the inside. So this is highlighted now in here. This is shadowed in here. If you ever feel like, I'm just going to give an example. If you ever feel like you put too much on, go back to your clear wax and you can buff some of that in case if you rub or get into that, and get rid of any of the dark wax that you don't like. Or again, you can go in and you can wipe it back off, not with water, but just with a dry part of the rag. Or again, like I said, you can use cheesecloth to wipe off any excess too. I want this highlight to kind of come through and around in this area too of the green. So I'm going to deepen some of this circle in here that's into the wood. Not a ton, but I want to add that contrast in here. And then up in here, I want to add a little bit into the bottoms of this kind of like shell. And then feather it back out. Get some, again, just giving it more depth inside there. So same thing here in some of these little grooves, you know, kind of deepening those up a little bit. Allowing the greens, those highlights to really stand out even more by adding that contrast around it. And these two, this isn't going to be the same on both sides because we highlighted it differently. We did the purple differently. So it's not going to be the same, you know, depths and shadows on both sides of that piece. Okay. With all of that, let me get the bottom section of this going too. So, just clear wax. I want to shadow down here more than I shadow anywhere else, because again, it's from that ground up. So when I think of like where we had shadow, I can go through and enhance that as well. And just really softly blend that out. But you can see kind of that difference in the two where the contrast is now, of even with that darker wax, if you decide to do it. I'm going to add a little bit to the legs and into those grooving areas. Just a little bit. And because the darker part's going to rise up, I want to make sure that I'm contrasting this whole leg down here too. And I didn't add more wax, it's just what's left on it, giving it some shadowing. Okay, I love this. This is so pretty. From a distance, you can see this too. Okay, so I want to do a little bit of it on top. Well, I can just bring you up here. This okay. Okay. So in here, just like we did on that front piece, I want to shadow in some of this, and I want to shadow in like up in here. So now that green really looks like a bright highlight. I'm just kind of getting into some of these corners. Not everywhere, but I'm going to kind of work on those corners a little bit more. Add some to this side. And this adds really cool shadows and contrast to the piece. And it just picks up any extra textures that might be in here. We've got texture in here. I'm looking for it specifically. Here we'll add a little bit of depth in the corners, so it looks a little loved and used. These little speckles are where we've added texture from those beginning two layers. I want to add a little bit of shadowing here in the corner. Okay. So let me put you down. And I'm gonna spin this so I can do this side. Okay, this looks so good, guys. I have the wheels taped, so I can't just roll it. Okay. So same thing, I'm gonna do legs down below with some of the black. Especially the bottoms. I love to kind of just build it from that bottom up. And those corners, just really feathering that out. So where I highlighted here, I'm doing the opposite and shadowing on the other side. Okay, I think that side's done too. So let me turn this back. I'm going to take you one more time over this closer so you can see the highlights, the shadowing, the depth, everything that we've created. Texture that we've made. The texture with salt wash. The legs look so good. The bottom that has highlights and depth to it. All the glow in here. That glow in here. So that's the end of this tutorial. I will splice all of the video together as well as some of the time lapses I've been able to take with some of the close-ups, and I'll finish this last side. I'll get my staged and photographed. You guys will have the videos before I get that done. But I'll get all of that done and emailed over to you guys. It'll be on a private link. Again, you'll have 30 days to go back, watch this as much as you need to. I hope this was really eye-opening and that you learned some new stuff. You see a big smiley face. Where's the smiley face? I'm not sure what she meant. Oh, in here, maybe. Yeah, that's cute. So if you have any questions, though, please feel free to just send me a message or email me direct. You guys will have all of this stuff by the end of today, the video portion, and then I'll work on getting some more images and stuff as well. I'll get some pictures taken of this, some close-ups, so you can see what some of the shadowing looks like too. So you have that for your reference. Thank you all for taking Textures and Colors workshop. This was so much fun. I love having you guys here. And I'm so excited to see what your guys' pieces look like. You should have plenty of paint. I have so much leftover paint sitting in front of me. So you've got a whole nother project that could probably happen if you love the colors. And yes, have fun. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.